Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And I'm here today, the beginning of a new week. And I want to share from the book of Joel, Prophet Joel. Small little prophet. Maybe you've read him recently, and maybe not. But I want to take the week and look at some of the things he said. But to start off, I want to read this description about the book of Joel. This book is primarily about God's promise to pour out his love on his people. And that even in the midst of judgment, God will show his grace. God will pour out his spirit on all of his people without reserve. And God pours out his spirit for a purpose. So what we're going to read this week and talk about is that even in the midst of troubles, God will show his grace. Now, I don't know about you, but I got all kinds of troubles. Some of them are little, some of them are big. That's just life. Now, I don't have anything compared to some other people's troubles, but maybe you're on the, shall we say, the trouble side of life. Or maybe you've just gotten out of it. Or who knows, maybe you're about to get into it. So either way, I think this week we'll have something to say to you. So let's look at beginning with chapter 1 and starting with verse 9, going through verse 12. Here's what the prophet Joel says. For there is no grain or wine to offer at the temple of the Lord. So the priests are in mourning. The ministers of the Lord are weeping. The fields are ruined. The land is stripped bare. The grain is destroyed. And the grapes have shriveled. The olive oil is gone. Despair, all you farmers. Wail, all of you vine growers. Weep, because the wheat and the barley, all the crops of the field are ruined. The grapevines have dried up, and the fig trees have withered. The pomegranate trees, palm trees, and apple trees, all the fruit trees have dried up. And the people's joy has dried up with them. Joel's talking about life here. He's talking about a lot of people, maybe even you. He's saying that everything is going wrong. Now, having had a farm one time, I didn't have to grow all of my food. I grew a good part of it, but I didn't have to do all of it. I could still run to the grocery store. But let's suppose you can't do that. Maybe you don't have the money to do it. Maybe the car's broken down. You can't get there. Maybe you are in such a deep depression that the thought of leaving your room is almost impossible. Or maybe you're heading out to the store. You're going to work. You are putting on a good face so nobody will see. Joel's talking about how circumstances dictate our lives. Now, as I read in the beginning, that God's promise will show us grace even in the midst of difficulties. But so many times, people, you, me, determine our joy based on our circumstances. And that's not the way to look at it. This book is about how God looks at life, not how we look at it. And how in the midst of whatever's happening, he's still seeing something positive. I'm not talking about just kidding yourself and trying to say something when you don't want to. I'm talking about a different reality. You and I live in the reality of our circumstances. And frankly, I don't know how to get out of them. I mean, we can only live for the right now. We can't live for the yesterday, and we sure as heck can't live for tomorrow. We have to live in the right now. And sometimes the right now looks really, really bleak. But as we'll learn this week, Joel has a better idea. But what he's saying here is that, and the people's joy dried up with the crops drying up. When we allow our joy to be dependent on our circumstances, we're just asking for trouble. Circumstances change. Now, I know there's some of you who've been discouraged a long time that are listening to me, and you felt like life hasn't been fair. Well, you know what? Life isn't fair. Never has been, never will be. It's just life. But we can rise above our circumstances. Throughout this week, I'm going to talk about that as Joel gives us some instructions. But we have to first understand that circumstances aren't the forever. Now, I'm not talking about mental illness and biochemical deficiencies that cause this or that. I'm just talking about ordinary you and me. We get up in the morning, we do whatever we have to do to get ready, and we go off on our day. Sometimes those days get really frustrating. I can't imagine being a fast food manager. I understand that that's one of the most difficult jobs in the world because you're trying to manage people whose motivation for their work is not very high. Now, the pay's better than it used to be, but I can't imagine dealing with the frustration day after day after day after day of trying to get that crew doing what it has to do in order to accomplish the task. Where are you today? What are your circumstances? What do they look like? Don't let them, if your circumstances are pretty bleak, don't let them make your spirit bleak. Well, I'll talk about how to do that as we go along through the week. Thanks for listening. If you have a prayer concern or a need, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet those needs. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow, share another thought. Take care.